Today on the Topping Show, Daily Wire versus the YouTube, Call of Duty Boycott expands, Amazon Alexa shuts down a house because of alleged racist remarks, Hilton Hotels abandons San Francisco, Netflix might host a golf tournament, Novartis to buy Chinook, Lockheed Martin teams up with GlobalFoundries, an author cancels a book because it took place in Russia, and GM to invest about $500 million into a Texas plant. All that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their owner at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, that's the joke. For your IT leader or business owner need a little assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Now, going on to the business part of the podcast, you have General Motors to invest $500 million into the Arlington, Texas plant, which will subsequently build more gasoline and diesel-powered SUVs. Which, of course, they should, because that's where they profit. They are conservatively estimating they'll make money off EVs 2 or 3, 4 years from now. Again, they're going to be a loss leader, aka you lose money for quite some time until they actually make a profit off of that product line. Now, they have about 5,200 employees, and that plant currently makes the Chevy Tahoe, the GMC Yukon, as well as the Cadillac Escalade, which everyone jokes that Cadillac is just a GM with a nicer badge. Kind of is. I mean, subsequently you're getting more luxurious materials, some fancy leather, maybe Corinthian, maybe, and you get some better technology and whiz bangers that they plug in there, but yeah, they are literally on the same assembly line, so that, I don't know if that's considered a conspiracy theory, but we could say today they all come from the same building. They have different badges. Which one is really up to you? Now, when asked about the actual expansion of the project, the GM representative said, quote, "The majority of the investment is to upgrade inside 4 walls of the existing building. New equipment will be installed in the plant's metal stamping, body shop, and general assembly areas," unquote. Now, fascinatingly enough, this plant was actually built in 1954. And of course, more importantly, and also important, they make the company's most profitable vehicles. In March this year, they produced 34,000 vehicles in that plant, which is a record, or actually a 70-year record for vehicles produced in North Texas. Now, in my opinion, it's still perhaps not a business blunder, but they should be doubling down on that investment, throwing $1 billion. This is literally the most important part of General Motors for their short-term profits, which again, they're hurting because you need those profits to offset the big losses from the EVs. And they want to go full EV, aka electric vehicles. You're going to need a lot more profits. Ford is doing the same thing. Ford made separate divisions. You have Ford Blue, which is the traditional Ford. You think of the good old-fashioned F-150, gas-powered. Think of the Ford Mustang, not the E-Mach. Ford Blue is the traditional. Then they have 2 other divisions, one for the commercial line, which is the large heavy-duty trucks and the cargo vans. And then they have their EV line, or division. And right now, Ford is heavily subsidizing the EV division because, again, they're losing money hand over fist. So if GM is only investing $500 million, I say that only because their total investments are double-digit billions. It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 10 plus billion a year that they are reinvesting back into the business. And again, these are the most profitable vehicles. Every time, the reason you see no more cars in America, by and large, you're seeing SUVs, crossovers, and trucks, because cars are usually hopefully unprofitable. Chevy Cruze, while I might be biased, I drove one, kind of liked it, a little stick shift, but those things would they would lose dealerships money left and right. The only way they would break even or make money was with financing and accessories. But if they sold a truck at a dealership, they're making $10,000+ of profit. That's a lot of gross. Gross is both a financial term as well as a euphemism in terms of that's a gross amount of profit, pun moderately intended. But that's why you see more and more companies putting more investments into crossovers, and shooting more of these SUVs, these plants. So if anything, I think they should expand this plant even bigger. Time shall tell to see how the company ventures, though. Now, other interesting business news, you have Lockheed Martin teaming up with GlobalFoundries. Now, Lockheed Martin, if you don't know about them, I cannot fathom how it's possible. They're quite literally the largest aerospace company, not in the U.S. only, on the planet. They are basically the only reason the U.S. still has any semblance of global dominance. They make the most advanced weapons on the planet, both vehicular as well as missiles and defense operations. Most modernly known for the F-35 Lightning II, which was a collaboration by more than 50 plus defense contractors making subcomponents all coming together. I know Elbit Systems, headquartered out of Israel, with the global U.S. headquarters out of Fort Worth, they made the helmet. The helmet alone for the F-35 Lightning II, that was about, I think it's $450,000 or $500,000 per helmet. Again, a huge, vast amount of technology goes into those platforms. Now that you know, if you didn't, that's who Lockheed Martin is, number one DoD contractor, Department of Defense contractor in the United States. Now, they're teamed up with GlobalFoundries. Now, GlobalFoundries is a semiconductor chip manufacturer, which, again, is key. In order for an item to be sold to the Department of Defense or any government entity, it has to be made in the United States. It was an act, I believe, passed by Nixon decades ago. There's a fancy term for it, correct me in the comments, but it does make sense from a political as well as an economic perspective to ensure your company is a little bit more not reliant on its enemies or precarious friends. It's supposed to make the country a little bit more independent from outside threats. So if there is a conflict with another country, all of your supplies for widgets or what have you, that supply chain is just cut off. So there's a logical sense, and there's a history of why the U.S. has decided to have these rules and implementations for these types of contracts and these products. Now, the issue we have with chips is Taiwan has 90+% of all advanced semiconductor manufactured on the planet, which, again, I know this is a little bit more political than business. We'll get to politics in a little bit, but I'm surprised there's not much more investment from the U.S. in terms of physical and rhetorical defense of that country. Nevertheless, going back to the point, they're teaming up to secure domestic semiconductor supply for their defense systems. Now, this strategic collaboration will secure manufacturing across a wide range of products and next-gen chips, and it will allow leveraging of GlobalFoundries technology to increase the anti-fragility in microelectronic systems and supply chains. Colloquially, or simply put, they're going to make U.S. manufactured, more resilient chips that can withstand impacts, G-forces, so that you could put them in missiles and other hypersonic missiles and more technologies that need to move quicker. You need a more durable product to withstand those forces. Makes sense. Now, the only reason this is really happening now is because of the CHIPS Act that Congress as well as Biden passed. Now, the CHIPS Act and Science Act was an act for chip manufacturers to come back to the U.S. It provides $52 billion in government subsidies for U.S. semiconductor production, as well as an investment tax for manufactured plants estimated to be about $24 billion. Which sounds good, but at the same time, it's our own damn fault, or rather politicians' own damn fault, that this happened in the first place. You went back the clock, one of my favorite channels, well, back when they actually had history, was the History Channel. One of the fascinating things was watching about the evolution of technology with electronics. I believe it was between the 60s and the 80s, double-digit, more than, I believe, 80 to 90% of electronics on the planet were made in the USA. Japan subsequently took a large part of that market share, and then China and then other countries kept chipping away. Chipping, moderately pun intended, but the reason the production left the United States is because people elected bureaucrats and politicians who passed laws that made business more and more anti-competitive. I mean, it's not just the cost of labor in the United States you have to worry about. You also have to worry about the myriad of lawsuits from not only employees, but states, federal government. There are a lot of hoops to jump through and exponential high cost. So they offshored all those jobs and those productions. The only reason they can bring it back now is because they have that huge tax subsidy, and thanks to automation. You don't need half or even maybe a quarter of the physical labor that you previously needed in order to produce these chips and these semiconductors. So it's interesting that everyone is having a hoorah about this. Well, you can bring back a lot more than just the chip manufacturer part of the economy. You can bring a lot more of those jobs back if you didn't have so much red tape. Will people learn from this and vote differently? No, probably not, but time shall tell. Maybe I'll be a hopeless optimist for today and say maybe. Now, other interesting business news, you have Novartis acquiring Chinook Therapeutics for $3.5 billion. Sounds big until you realize Novartis is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. They're one of the most advanced pharmaceutical companies on the planet, headquartered in Sweden. Now, this blockbuster deal is supposed to be the quote-unquote, to help, quote-unquote, treat the, again, I'm going to butcher this beyond all belief, immunoglobulin A neuropathy, which no one can pronounce, so they do have an acronym. First time all week, perhaps I'm thankful for acronyms, which I usually just think people use to sound smart. It's called INGAN, IGAN, INGAN. I take it back. Terrible acronym. I don't know how to pronounce it. If we had a canceled segment of the podcast, they'd be canceled for that acronym. Need something simpler that anyone can pronounce without. Now, that is an autoimmune disease in which that could lead to kidney failure in predominantly young adults. Now, Novartis will gain access to Chinook's two late-stage assets to fight IgAN, or YAN, how you pronounce it. When asked for comment, the Novartis CEO von Nasserholm, something Swedish, said that the acquisition helped solve the, quote, one of society's most challenging healthcare issues, unquote. After I looked into it, you see that about 21 million people in the United States are affected by the issue per year. So it is a substantial impact on the healthcare industry as well as the U.S. in general. And it's not too surprising to see these more and more of these acquisitions come to light. They've actually gone up in 2023 by 24%. So we're about halfway through the year, and there's been $157 billion in healthcare acquisitions, which makes sense. It's a huge economy. It's actually one of the second largest economy in Houston, Texas. A lot of people think it's 100% oil because obviously there's a big oil presence. A lot of those oil companies are headquartered there, but I mean, healthcare is a huge industry as well. So not too surprising there's a little bit of consolidation in the industry. Other interesting businesses, you have Netflix. They finally might get involved in the good old-fashioned game of golf, which apparently is a sport enjoyed by millions of Americans every single year. Which, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think it's like tennis. It's really fun to play for some people. I just can't imagine sitting down and watching hours upon hours of golf. I can appreciate the skill, and I have attempted golf. That perhaps that'd be a comedy hour where it gets people to see me attempt to try to use a wedge. Not the sandwich, the actual thing with the golf. I can hit the ball sometimes. Now, Netflix may host its first ever celebrity golf tournament in the fall. Now, this is according to the report by the Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous sources, so take it with a grain of salt. And the event would be held in Las Vegas, feature stars from its, quote, Drive to Survive, unquote, Formula docuseries, as well as some professional golfers from its, quote, Full Swing documentary. Now, this would be Netflix's first step into live streaming world and the sporting avenue, which a lot of people are hoping will attract, again, more viewers, more advertisers, more subscribers. You're seeing a similar business model where you have YouTube, which again is owned by Google, owned by Alphabet. They paid a couple, I believe it's 157 billions of dollars for the NFL rights so that they could stream the NFL Sunday games on the YouTube Premium, thereby forcing people to pay for that YouTube subscription. I doubt it'll be that successful, partially because once you get something for free, you very rarely want to pay for it. That's a very hard objection to overcome in business, and pretty much every industry comes across that phenomenon. But it'd be interesting to see if Netflix can adapt, because again, when it comes to the streaming wars, the most important thing you have to have is original content. The reason Disney Plus is killing it, and they're making such a vast amount of impact on the streaming industry in such a relative short amount of time. You have Netflix dominating for years because it was an industry leader. It was pretty much the first successful to market. But Disney has a whole vault. They literally actually call their old archive data or the old archive videos and movies the Disney Vault, which marketing A+, is a brilliant euphemism to use, especially because there's actually a physical vault as well. But again, it's because they have so much intellectual property that no one else could stream except them. Now, if Netflix can translate that into more sports and gives more people to actually pay for it, people who enjoy golf presumably make a pretty darn good living. I've seen the golf price. I've spoken to people when it comes to the price of golf clubs, and I've been astonished, to say the least. So it might be a good way to help grow Netflix, as again, they're all trying to get that bigger and bigger market share, get a good ROI for the investors. But time shall tell. Now, going on to the culture part of the podcast, you have Hilton Hotels abandoning San Francisco, which allegedly used to be a beautiful place filled with rich culture, food, technology, businesses. It used to be a flourishing economy, apparently, allegedly. I had to dust off about 3/4 inch of dust off an old history book. I joke, but not too much. It used to be the place to be, some might say, and they have houses worth more than most countries. I don't know, some type of euphemism there. Now, the investment firm that owns the Hilton San Francisco Union Square and Park 55 hotels is actually walking away from its debt and surrendering it to its lender. And they've opted to cease payment on their $725 million loan. Now, this is a very interesting phenomenon. A lot of people are comparing it to walking away from a mortgage on a house. So you're paying into that loan, and you have some equity in it, and they're just choosing to walk away completely. So by doing so, they're surrendering any equity they built up into it. Now, does this have anything to do with the fact that the state decriminalized all theft under $950 and drugs are rampant beyond all belief? Yeah, obviously. There's very little incentive to visit San Francisco. You need a nice armed guard security, and of course, you actually can't defend yourself unless you're a politician because of the laws in that state around guns. I find it quite abhorrent. But that's just my 3 cents. Again, inflation is rough. It used to be my 2 cents. But you had that cliche advertisement that the city released. Maybe we'll cover it more on the show. They're basically begging people to come back. And historically, they never really had to advertise it because in pop culture and just technology, it's been a long staple of a cliche place to visit with America. Kind of like how everyone needs to go to the Empire State Building, see New York City, see the Statue of Liberty. It used to be kind of a staple for a lot of tourists and a lot of people to visit throughout their lifetime, take a look. Now people are avoiding it like the plague, and they're actually moving out in droves. Will they be able to turn around the culture of San Francisco? Time shall tell, but given the culture they currently have and the laws that they're currently pursuing, outlook not so good, as the Magic 8 Ball might say. Now, other interesting cultural news, you have Amazon Alexa shutting down a house after an alleged racist remark. Now, this is taking place Wednesday, May 31st, 2023, and this is a user where, again, I wouldn't say he's a very prudent or skeptical person. He wired up his whole house to use the Amazon crap. So he had the Ring, he had the lights, the locks, pretty much I need to double check on the locks. But one of those people who went all in and said, "Hey Amazon, I don't know you or trust you. Oh no, I know you, but I don't know you, but I'm dumb enough to trust you. Here's the keys to my kingdom. Here's my house. Here's cameras so you can see inside my house, and you own the data. I don't, because again, it's on your Amazon Web Services, their cloud platform." Now, I digress. When this gentleman was asked for comment, he said, "I finally regained my access to my Amazon account after an unexpected and unwarranted lockout that lasted nearly a week. This wasn't simply an inconvenience, though. I have a smart home. My primary means of interfacing with all the devices and automations is through Amazon Echo devices via Alexa. This incident left me with a house full of unresponsive devices, a silent Alexa, and a lot of questions." I usually don't blame the victim, but yeah. Now, he actually called the customer service rep because, of course, if you go to your home and nothing's working, instantly enough, you probably think, hey, it's probably something, maybe they have an outage on AWS, or maybe there's an accidental mischarge on my credit card. So this person called up the Amazon, because they actually did have a customer support number and was an Amazon executive apparently, and he called and said, he asked him what's up, and actually in an accusatory tone apparently, he said, "Are you sure you don't know what's going on?" He goes, "No, I have no idea. What are you talking about?" Now, allegedly, an Amazon delivery driver went up to this gentleman's home and dropped something off, and on the way back, he heard something racist. So this employee of Amazon filed a complaint, and Amazon just shut off his whole house for a week. No, and apparently there's barely any recourse. So this gentleman, he had all that data, so he had the streams, all the videos, so he sent that information. Well, I guess he resent it because it's all on Amazon Web Services anyway, but he sent him the data saying, "I'm not hearing anything racist here." And he also further explained that most of his neighborhood is of the same race. And apparently, as the gentleman was walking away, so the gentleman dropped off a box at the front door, he was walking away, and the automated Amazon voice gave him a response. And this gentleman apparently also had headphones in. So all in all, it appears to be a complete miscommunication. But what is the moral of the story here? Well, it should be self-evident if you ever read 1984 or any science fiction dystopian book. But the moral of the story is, you don't own your stuff. Amazon owns your stuff. Don't trust companies you don't know. I mean, this person is basically locked out of their own property because they were foolish enough to think they could trust Amazon. And they just left him out to dry for about a week. And thankfully, he didn't say anything racist, because I'm sure if he did, he would lose his job, his friends, his employment. I mean, it's the worst thing you could be in America, and it's also morally vacuous as well. It's disgusting. And this guy, apparently, he had the evidence, he showed them, and yet they didn't care. They just took about a week to let him gain access to his stuff. Oh, if he has a modicum of intelligence, I'm sure, or I would hope, he would rip all that stuff out of his house so he doesn't have spyware or spying devices everywhere to begin with. But also, you don't have these instances where you can't use your stuff because you've wired it all into one ecosystem, which again is the big downside of convenience. A lot of people think these products are convenient. Personally, I don't trust them. There's a reason I don't have those little echoes everywhere, all over the house. Now, other interesting cultural news, you have the Call of Duty boycott expanding as Call of Duty, again, the video game company made by Activision, which again is also a bigger business, Amazon, rather, not Amazon yet. It's actually Activision Blizzard, as those two giant video game companies merged together. Now, they're continuing to tweet, which kind of the opposite of the Bud Light approach. But let me rewind a couple of seconds here. Now, Call of Duty, biggest multi-video game platform I could think of right after the World of Warcraft one. Now, they had an issue where one of the top streamers of Call of Duty, so someone who makes a living by playing the video game and live streaming the interaction of his usage, he was on the Twitter, and someone was talking about an issue where a public school was teaching children about sexual themes, and they're having a Pride Month talking about very specific sexual things that are not appropriate for children. Now, all this guy said was, rudimentary speaking, leave the kids alone. That one statement completely banned him on the platform. Not only did they ban him, again, this user is Nick Merckx, but Call of Duty Activision actually pulled his skin from the store. And skin in this case is a appearance package in which you pay extra to have particular clothing or particular styles or paint on guns. Now, in this case, he was such a large, successful streamer for the video game, he had his own outfit, basically, that you can purchase. And, of course, he would get a commission off of that, and Activision loves it because it says it's free money, basically. You design it once, you just copy-paste. It's really easy money. It's DLC or download content, all those upgrades, is just pure profit. So they removed him from the store, as well as banishing him from the game. And Call of Duty, they decided to go the opposite of the Bud Light approach. The Bud Light approach was, they haven't posted in, look at my watch, months. Which in social media, if you're not tweeting or going on social media, at least depending on your brand, once a day or every other day, it's basically years in the social media realm. Now, Activision decided to go the opposite. They're still posting multiple times a day, which is great because it gives us plenty of free entertainment. As the youth would say, they are ratioed. Now, most recently, the AK guy, which is Brandon Hero, he's a really he has a YouTube channel, a really fascinating way. He actually custom builds guns, and he said, quote, again, this is to Call of Duty, and Call of Duty, again, that's their specific Twitter handle for that division of the company. Now, or product of the company. Now, they put out another ad saying, hey, here's an upcoming video game. And the ratios are entertaining to say the least. Now, Brandon Herrera, the AK guys, responded to the tweet saying, man, you guys really thought posting this was a good idea, huh? Unquote. That's all he said. That was so ratioed. His statement got 3,467 likes, about 60,000 views, and 47 retweets. And the original post from Activision for Call of Duty, that got, I believe it's like 89, or it got sub 1,000 hearts or likes. And again, this is a fascinating social cultural phenomenon in which the replies against the first post are greater liked and greater shared than the actual original one. They're also expanding, so more and more people are joining this boycott. Now, this other player, and again, I had to do a lot of research. The last time I played Call of Duty was on the Xbox 360 when I was in high school, when I had time, which feels like a lifetime ago. Nevertheless, this new gentleman is called Tim the Tate Man. No relation to Andrew Tate. I did research that a little bit. He is again a very popular Call of Duty streamer, and he also had his own skin in the game. And he asked Call of Duty to remove his bundle from Modern Warfare 2, and Activision subsequently just pulled it out. So Activision and Call of Duty, they are doubling down on these bans. So instead of saying, maybe we should clarify, no. And again, all the other comments are saying, leave the kids alone, leave the kids alone. Those are getting hundreds of likes. And I've seen maybe one or two out of 58 responses that are actually about the game that they're trying to advertise or supporting the company. So they're getting ridiculously ratioed. Although maybe this is a good distraction from the fact that they're having multiple sexual harassment lawsuits against them at the moment. And allegedly someone actually worked at the company and apparently was treated so poorly they decided to end their own life. So maybe this is a better distraction than those topics. Either way, they don't have a great track record for public relations, some might say. Now, they also somewhat have a pseudo monopoly on a lot of these. I forget what you call them. First person shooters. Activision and Blizzard, between those two companies, they make pretty much a majority of that category of video games. I know there are other competitors. You have EA Games being probably number 2 developer. It'll be interesting to see, does this boycott really impact their numbers, and how fiscal of an impact will they have, and will they care? Will they just put virtue signaling, or will they put politics before employees or before profits? Time shall tell. Now, going on to the political part podcast, you have a report saying that the CIA warned Ukraine not to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, many of you may have remembered, Nord Stream pipeline was, again, an oil pipeline going from Russia to Germany, which we were told pretty much every news outlet, except maybe Tucker Carlson, they all said, oh yeah, Russia did it, which, again, why would you destroy your way to make an income? Or destroy, rather, it is secondary, but in this case, your primarily purpose is to push the product or the oil, which again would get you an income. So we were told, Russia blew it up. Although, interestingly enough, in an interview with Biden, a reporter asked about the topic before it was blown up, and he kind of just chuckled and goes, oh, don't worry, that's not going to be an issue. Because during the original sanctions of Russia, when the conflict first debuted, a lot of people were wondering, how are we going to financially insulate them so they can't make any money? U.S. businesses were leaving. I know for Starbucks, a lot of those franchise companies actually withdrew licensing in terms of the permission to use their logo over there. They withdrew operations. And they were wondering, how else could we kneecap the company's economic perspective? And someone asked Biden, like, hey, should someone blow it up? Or shouldn't we do something about that? And he just kind of chuckled and goes, don't worry, that's not going to be a thing for a while. It's not going to be an issue. Which, again, I would pay so much to play poker with him, because I can't help but think I would make a disproportionate amount of cash and money. Nevertheless, now we're getting more and more reports saying they probably shouldn't have done that. Now, the CIA apparently warned Ukraine not to destroy the Nord Stream pipeline months before the attack. This was after receiving a tip from the Dutch military intelligence, according to the media reports. Now, last November, you had the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines, which linked Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea. They were targeted by 2 specific blasts, which was called a deliberate sabotage by Swedish and Danish authorities. And of course, when asked for comment, Ukraine comedian and now President Zelensky said, "I'm the president, I will give orders accordingly," unquote. Nothing of the sort has been done in Ukraine. I would never act that way, unquote. Really? Now, I'm a little bit more skeptical, considering he's made billions of dollars off this operation, but also a little more pessimistic, as everything that happens, he immediately blames Russia and tries to get the whole world to nuke Russia and put the world into World War III. Now, one of my favorite examples of, I don't know if it's a lack of intelligence or lack of rationalization or how to describe his lack of tact or integrity, but there's an instance where a missile actually hit Ukraine deep inside the country, and they were all go, oh, it has to be Russia, we need to invade them. And he actually called the unit and says, hey, you need to act, you need to make it a no-fly zone, which would get the U.S. to go into a war. Now, a couple days later, it turned out Poland accidentally fired the missile and it hit Ukraine civilians. So it wasn't Russia, it was an accidental friendly fire. But again, the second it happened, assumed it was Russia and wanted the whole world to go all in. So that's why I'm always a little bit more than skeptical when it comes to his statements. He also considered a war crime, well, a fashion crime. He wore a sweater when he visited the U.S. We could have given them over $120 billion and you can't suit up? That's despicable and pathetic. Now, other interesting political news, you have an author canceling their book because people in Ukraine are sad because the book would have taken place in Russia. Again, it's a book. Now, this is from Elizabeth Gilbert, who's best known from her book called Eat, Pray, Love, and she said that her upcoming book would not be released as scheduled after a backlash from Ukrainians, because the book's taking place in a Russian setting. The new novel, titled The Snow Forest and set in the middle of Siberia in the 1900s, was supposed to be released in February 2024, coincidentally around the 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion. Now, she announced that the project was due to a, quote, massive outpour of reactions from Ukrainian readers who are worried about the book would romanticize Russia at the time when the country is accused of committing war crimes. Wait a minute, it just said the book takes place in the 1900s. The 1900s? You can't write a book about the 1900s without romanticizing. And again, was Putin in charge of the 1900s? Again, I'm not a Russian historian, but I know that much isn't true. No, he was not in charge if you didn't know. And again, I don't know if this book is about the politics of Russia, but again, there's a big distinction people need to should remember. There's a big difference between Russian politics, Russian military, and the Russian people. They're not just all one group. Although people seem to forget that when it only comes to that group of people, it's all Russia, all bad. Yet you would never say that about any other country or any other group of people. Would you? No, obviously you would not. But they decided to relocate the entire book's location. And I can't imagine that publisher is too happy unless hopefully the book was not already in print, because that's a big mistake to have to reprint all those damn books. But it is fascinating to see the business and the culture and the politics all come together, because wind back the clock 36 months ago, no one would have really cared if the book took place in Russia. But now, because of the political issues surrounding the conflict, you see that politics invading more and more of the private sector, even if it's a book taking place in the 1900s, oddly enough. Now, going on to the business blunder of the day, you have the Daily Wire versus YouTube. Now, this is coming after more and more censorship, as well as censorship, discrimination, and demonetization of the Daily Wire. Which the Daily Wire, just a little background, they're one of the largest, fastest growing conservative media companies, headquartered out of Nashville, Tennessee. Believe it or not, now they probably got about 250 employees, about 1 million subscribers. So in terms of traditional media, not very big, but in terms of up-and-coming media and alternative media, they are one of the largest and fastest growing and most successful. 1 million paid subscribers is astonishingly successful for a company of their size. Shoot, I really appreciate if you take the time to like, subscribe, and comment to this video, because every comment, every subscription helps out. Now, DW Plus or Daily Wire Plus is their paid subscriber, where you pay, you get access to their videos, their reading, what have you. I use it, partially use this as I reference some of the articles that they publish, and I find their material interesting as well. Now, their co-CEO Jeremy Boring noted in the past 90 days, accounts associated with the platform have received 104 violations for, quote-unquote, hateful and derogatory content, unquote. Now, they specified it is mainly directed around commentary or around trans issues. Which, again, it all comes back to the issue of what is hate speech and what is hateful and derogatory. Is stating facts derogatory? Some people say yes. Even though you have conservative commentators such as Matt Walsh, many of the people on the show staunchly believe that you're born what you are and you cannot alter that. And their religious belief, in this case, is clearly being discriminated against. Unfortunately, in the United States, religion is not what it used to be, and that seems to be the only part that you're allowed and even encouraged to discriminate against. So from a religious perspective, I wholeheartedly think you should not be able to discriminate people against that way. Now, Jeremy went on to say that in the past couple of months, specifically, host Candace Owens as well as Michael Knowles have had 200 violations. That's astonishing. Now, it's even more concerning because it reminds me more and more of the book 1984 by George Orwell, which, if public schools are worth a damn, they'd actually have people read. They aren't. So if you're a parent, can't recommend that book enough. I'd probably say wait till they're maybe early teenagers years. It's not a happy book. It certainly doesn't even have a happy ending. However, it is exceedingly realistic and accurate on how it depicts the world. Now, this is an instance where they're just not banning and going after current content that they're creating. They are retroactively going back and censoring and getting rid of those content. Tim Pool has had the same issue where he was recently looking at his YouTube library of all of the past things that he published, and some of the videos just mysteriously were not there. So they didn't give him a strike or they didn't penalize him, but they just removed it without telling him. Again, 1984, you have to rewrite history and erase things that you do not agree with. Now, the penalties went on to specify Matt Walsh getting his channel demonetized, which in terms of character, I can't help but respect Matt Walsh because he noted that he was making about $100,000 a month off the ad revenue, the advertising revenue from his YouTube channel. And his religious belief is one that he will not change his perspective. He will not change his belief about people being able to transition. And he would rather stick to his convictions than receive $100,000 a month. How many people still have that tenacity and still have that backbone? Maybe single digits. It's somewhat heartwarming, and it's nice to see someone actually stand for what they believe in, as opposed to just bending the knee. As more and more people just do whatever it takes to make a quick buck, they don't actually stand up for what they believe in. They don't actually have any convictions. They just sell out and they acquiesce and just will do whatever they're told. They'll just completely throw away their value systems. So for that alone, I can't help but respect Matt Walsh for sticking to his guns. And again, he has about 6 kids now, plus a wife. So it's not as if he has nothing to lose, but he decided he's going to stick to his conviction. So his channel is completely demonetized now. He can still have his content there, depending on what he posts. They'll probably remove it. But all the ads you see, if there are still ads, I think 100% of that money goes to YouTube. I'm still learning about that. This channel still isn't monetized yet. Thankfully, thanks to all the people tuning in, we're getting closer and closer every day, and I greatly appreciate it. So I'm learning a little bit more about that from that perspective. But he's basically right now using it as a marketing vessel. So you see him on the YouTube because they do have the largest audience on the planet. And subsequently, they're hoping that you actually go to dailywire.com and click and subscribe and pay for the subscription so that they can actually pay for their employees and their editors and all of that good stuff. And they can grow the company and have a big impact on the culture wars. But right now, that's become almost like a loss leader. They're not making money on the YouTube, but still it costs a lot of money to produce it, and they put it there. And they're going to start putting it on Twitter, which is only just now starting to have programs where you can actually monetize Twitter in terms of putting content on there. And that's very limited fiscally. I think Elon's put about $5 million in that initiative. I digress. I'll get back to the point. Now, Michael Knowles and Candace Owen were recently suspended for 7 days, and as well as receiving a second strike, with Jordan Peterson apparently getting a first strike. Now, as simple as it sounds, similar to the American sport of baseball, I've tuned in a couple times, but if you have 3 strikes, you're out. And by you're out, you're nuked. Your channel is just erased from history. Further emphasizing the importance of 1984 and the dystopian future that we live in, or present rather. It's quite concerning, where all Americans used to believe, I may not believe in what you're saying, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Unfortunately, now most people are saying, if you offend me, you shouldn't exist, which is quite concerning. So they've gotten 2 strikes. And again, these personalities and these reporters, whatever you want to call them, their whole life is media creation and distribution. And unfortunately, YouTube, 25% of the US population gets their news off YouTube. That's huge. And that number is only going to exponentially increase as more and more people cut the cord in terms of, good old-fashioned cable news network. You guys have Fox News brilliantly shooting themselves in the foot multiple times, firing their top personality, Tucker Carlson, who subsequently got over 100 million views on the first video he put on YouTube showing his first show. Yeah, Fox News is in trouble, to say the least. But you're seeing more and more people go to the internet and go to these platforms for their news. If you have the largest singular platform censoring whole groups of people in whole areas of thought, well, that removes all possibility of actually having a debate of ideals. And you're not going to have the best ideals come to the surface if you're not allowing those ideals to exist, or you're just, more accurately, suppressing them, annexing them, and completely admonishing them from our society. Now, in terms of how much of an impact this has on YouTube, the Daily Wire is huge. Now, in last week, so this is 1 week, the Daily Wire and all of their associates, so all the main personalities, you got Matt Walsh, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles. I'm sorry, Michael, you're still in the top 4. I didn't forget about you. But all their associates combined, 157 million views on YouTube. That's huge numbers. YouTube is profiting off of them, and people are going to YouTube just for them. And yet, they're completely treating them like a malicious tumor that needs to be subsequently removed. Now, YouTube is also having an issue because they're losing ad revenue year after year after year. The amount of ads that businesses are paying to put on the platform is decreasing. I believe it's an average about 2.8% last time I reported on it a couple weeks back. If anything, YouTube should be incentivizing more philosophical, more different perspectives to come onto the platform to give the consumer more options, and also fuels more interest as well. There's nothing more boring than turning on the same mainstream media because you're going to see the same issue reported the same exact way. The reason I like and enjoy and seek different alternative opinions is because it makes life a lot more interesting. You also learn a lot more about the topics and the subjects being covered. It's inherently more interesting, which is why I always tell people, if you're watching something on the far left or the far right or the left or the right, check out both perspectives. It's fascinating in and of itself just to see how they'll cover the same issue from two different perspectives, and you'll learn new things every time. And I would also argue, in ways, it also makes you a more rounded person because you're gaining perspective. It makes life a lot more fun, a lot more entertaining. Truth be told, some of my most favorite debates and just chats are with people who are more on the left side of the aisle, and just learning about what are their thoughts on the same issues, what are their arguments, what are their ideals, and seeing where more often than not, there are still some overlap that, unfortunately, mainstream media wants to think it's all one side versus the other. It's a binary choice. But in many ways, I think Americans agree on more things that they think, and hopefully someday they'll figure that out. But for YouTube, again, this is a suffering platform. They're losing ad revenue. To start poking and bullying one of your top producers, that's got to be the business blunder of the day. And a lot of these personalities, they're on the precipice of being completely demonetized. No, not only demonetized, but they're about to lose those personalities forever. Because again, if it's 3 strikes, you're out. And guess where they're going? Twitter, Rumble, all the alternatives. The Daily Wire Plus has their own channel that they have. If you go to their website, log in, they have their own videos hosted there as well. So all their alternatives are growing exponentially, and YouTube is hurting, and yet they're still going to do this. Is it because of ESG scores? Is it because someone with a lot of money is willing to lose more money? Is it I can't help but think it's ideological, because from a purely business fiscal perspective, it makes no sense to completely ostracize one side of the debate. Some people say that advertisers are pushing it because they want less controversy. But again, you're going to get the most volume of users and prospective clients, I think, if you allow more discord, more conversation, more perspectives, more content in general. If anything, YouTube should be paying or incentivizing the Daily Wire to be exclusive content where people could only get that channel content on that one platform. But they're not. They're just pushing away one of the top producers. And I can't help but think that's got to be the business blunder of the day, if not perhaps the week. Time shall tell. But I want to take the moment to thank everyone for taking time to tune in today. Cannot thank you enough for liking, subscribing, commenting. Each one of those things greatly help the channel out. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.